Hey there YouTubers, my name is Eric Gutierrez, as obviously TheBitPlayer. Today I am still without my good camera, but I still wanted to cover Sonic the Hedgehog in celebrating its 25th anniversary. Over here you'll see all the different versions that I'll be reviewing, so without wasting any more time, let's begin. Sonic the Hedgehog. The once icon that is the only one to have rivaled the great Mario has now fallen from grace. I honestly thought he was going to make a comeback since, in my opinion, Sonic Unleashed and the games released afterwards were pretty good, but I was let down after this train wreck. Hopefully they can make it up by not messing up Fire Nights. Now I've been a Sonic fan since I was a kid playing the OG Sonic the Hedgehog on the Genesis, and I can go on about the series, but right now we're going to talk about Sonic the Hedgehog on the Genesis and a few of its ports. The story of Sonic the Hedgehog and where it all started was in the tropical paradise of South Island. Sonic the Hedgehog's animal friends started disappearing one by one. He discovered that the evil scientist Dr. Robotnik has kidnapped them and turned them into his robot slaves. All this is part of his plan to collect 6 of the mysterious Chaos Emeralds. Sonic decides to embark on a quest to free his animal friends and stop Dr. Robotnik's plan. Now here's something interesting. The story I just told you was the story told to us in the manual here in the US. In the Japanese manual, it states that Dr. Eggman is back to his old tricks again, implying that this isn't the first time Sonic and Eggman bumped heads. They add a short monologue of Eggman complaining about Sonic always ruining his plans and wants to get those Chaos Emeralds to get rid of Sonic once and for all. It seems that Sega ditched the Japanese story and decided that the American version is where it all started. The gameplay for Sonic the Hedgehog was so unique for its time, at least for me, since the only other games I played back in the day was Mario, TMNT, and Jack on the NES. The gameplay was fast that sometimes it was hard to keep up. Looking back at it, it's so weird and hard to believe that Sonic does not have his spin dash move. It's one of Sonic's key things. Sonic's spin dash was something introduced in Sonic the Hedgehog 2 along with his lovable pal, Tails. There are 7 zones in Sonic the Hedgehog 1, but only 6 are full 3-act zones, with the last zone, Final Zone, being the boss level. Each level has its own unique theme, like the Labyrinth Zone being a submerged maze, Starlight Zone being a roller coaster city, and Spring Yard Zone being a casino pinball zone before the casino zone was a thing. All these level designs make me think, man, South Island is one amazing island. There's a special stage you can play only after you finish a Act 1 or 2 with at least 50 rings. When you cross the finish line, a large ring will appear, and if you touch it before the game loads you to the next act, you get to play the special stage. In the special stage, you have the opportunity to collect one of the 6 Chaos Emeralds. Sonic will be in his ball form, going around a rotating maze. You have to manage your way through the maze without touching any of the gold balls until you see the Chaos Emerald. The Chaos Emerald will be enclosed by diamonds, and by touching the diamonds, they will eventually disappear, and then you can get your Chaos Emerald. As a kid, I remember the special stage being very difficult, only being able to reach the Chaos Emerald on the first few times. Playing it again, I don't see how I had such a hard time on the special stage, since I find it easy now. Now I have a quick question, and I'm wondering if it's just me. While I do love the Sonic the Hedgehog soundtrack, but is it just me, or does the background music feel out of place to the level it's playing on? Well, except for the Scrap Brain Zone. I don't know, maybe that's just me. But I do have to say the best soundtrack in this game has to be the boss theme for Eggman. Anytime I hear it, I'm like, holy cow, this villain is one badass. It really makes him sound like a threat, even if he might not be. Speaking of bosses, the bosses are all Eggman in different robotic gear. And I don't know, I feel like the boss battles are a mixed match of hard bosses and easy bosses. For example, Eggman's Mind Dropper in the Starlight Zone was a challenge to me. But then you had bosses like Eggman's Spike Weapon in the Spring Yard Zone that I didn't really pose a challenge to me. Although I do remember as a kid this boss being a challenge because he would take away the platform and I would fall to my death. Surprising that this game has 2 endings. As a kid I remember getting the normal ending when I finished the game, but never knowing it was one of 2 possible endings. I just beat the game. I might have gotten the Chaos Emerald or 2, not thinking nothing of it, but it wasn't until I was older and played a few Sonic games knowing that by getting all 7 Chaos Emeralds, I could turn it to Super Sonic. So I went back and played the original Sonic the Hedgehog games on the Genesis and made sure to collect all 7 Chaos Emeralds, only to realize that there were 6 and could not turn supersonic. At least I was able to get the good ending this time. But even then, I didn't know it was one of 2 possible endings, since I did not have internet back then, and again, I didn't think nothing of it. Some of you guys may not know this fact, so let me drop some knowledge on you. We all know if you put Sonic the Hedgehog 3 on Sonic & Knuckles card, you get the full Sonic 3 experience that was always intended to be. And if you put Sonic 2 on Sonic & Knuckles, you got to play Sonic the Hedgehog 2 as Knuckles. But unfortunately, you cannot put Sonic the Hedgehog on top of Sonic & Knuckles and play as Knuckles in Sonic 1. Well, unless you get the hack version of the game, so the more you know. Well, that's a look at Sonic the Hedgehog 1 on the Genesis, and I should honestly just call it Sonic the Hedgehog, but I don't want you guys to get confused with this atrocity. Now another question, is it bad that I actually like the game? The next game on the list is Sonic the Hedgehog for the Sega Master System. For those of you who don't know what the Sega Master System is, Sega had a system before the Genesis, surprise surprise, and that system was the Sega Master System. The Sega Master System was an 8-bit system like the NES, although I don't believe there was a big rivalry between the Master System and the NES like the one the Genesis and the SNES had. The Sega Master System port of Sonic the Hedgehog was developed by HN Corp in October 1991, 4 months after the release of the Genesis version. While I'm not sure if it was supposed to be a direct port of the Genesis version, the games have a few things in common. Story-wise, there isn't really a change. Dr. Robotnik is still working on taking over South Island to gather all the Chaos Emeralds. He managed to kidnap all the island's animals and turn them into badniks. Sonic, hearing of Dr. Robotnik's plan, heads to South Island to save his animal friends. Some of the big changes come from the level design of the game. In the Genesis version, you have many options to reach the end destination, whichever way you like. You don't like the lower portion of the level? Well, you can take the highway, or the middle route. But the Master System version is a little bit different. In the Master System version, all those options are taken away for a very linear style gameplay. The challenge in the game still comes from making your way through the level to reach your goal, but instead of having multiple ways of getting there, you only have one path there. And another thing, you can't go fast like in the Genesis version. You really have to take it slow because there are many obstacles you have to deal with like in the regular platformer, and it's a bummer. What is a Sonic game if you can't go fast? They do something that I've never seen in a Sonic game before. They have an auto-scrolling level. While playing these levels, they really made me feel like I was playing one of the levels in Super Mario Bros. 3. Just because they changed the level design for the Master System version that is nothing alike from the Genesis version, it doesn't mean that it's a bad game. I still enjoyed platforming through the levels, and some of these levels can be seen as a challenge. Oh, and because I just want to mention this, and not sure where else to put it, there is no loops in any of the levels. I know. The zones and the number of the zones have changed in the Master System version. In the Genesis game, you had 7 zones, and in the Master System you have 6. While both games share similar zones like Green Hill Zone, Labyrinth Zone, and Scrap Brain Zone, you have some unique zones exclusive to the Master System, like the Bridge Zone, Jungle Zone, and Sky Base Zone, which if you ever want to enjoy, which I say you should. Very similar to the Genesis version, each zone in the Master System port has 3 levels, 2 regular levels that are get to the finish line, and a third that has a boss at the end. Let me ask a question, do you ever want to see your progress throughout the game? Basically see yourself get closer to the final boss like in Donkey Kong Country. Well, the Sega Master System version gives you an open world map that as you beat through a level, you get to see yourself get closer and closer to Eggman, and I think it's fantastic. There have been a few changes to the soundtrack. For example, Labyrinth Zone has a new theme song. Give it a listen. This also applies to the Scrap Brain Zone. I'm really disappointed with the Eggman boss theme. I expected more out of this. It's just not the same. It's not threatening anymore. I do have to say that my favorite soundtrack in this game is the jungle theme. It's so upbeat and I love it. While the Genesis bosses are a mixed match, the Master System version are all just easy. Chances are you aren't going to have any difficulty with them. Heck, some of the bosses levels don't even have a boss. In the Scrap Brain Zone, you must maneuver yourself through the very easy maze with no threat at all. It's all trial and error as you find your way to the top. Now I'm not saying this idea was a bad idea, I'm just saying it's very easy. A really big change in the port of the game is how you get Chaos Emeralds. In the Genesis version, you have to collect 50 rings, and when you cross the finish line you can go to a special stage and have a chance to win the Chaos Emerald. But in the Master System port, they changed it up a bit. You used to have special stages you can enter if you collect 50 rings before the finish line, but the special stages don't give you a Chaos Emerald. The way you collect the Chaos Emeralds in this version is by finding them throughout specific levels, but some of the hiding spots for the Chaos Emeralds are ridiculous. Just like in the Genesis version, if you collect all 6 Chaos Emeralds, you can unlock the good ending. Now to look at the Sega Master System version of Sonic the Hedgehog, and honestly, I never played the game much than just a few minutes when I unlocked it in Sonic DX, and even then I believe it was the Game Gear version. Well, speaking of Game Gear version, that's the next game I'll be looking at. Now there was a port of Sonic the Hedgehog for the Sega Game Gear. The Sega Game Gear was Sega's first handheld system. Instead of porting the Genesis version of Sonic the Hedgehog, they decided to port over the Master System version, which is something they would continue to do. There are a few differences between the Master System and the Game Gear version, but let me just point out a few. The Game Gear version screen ratio was reduced compared to the Master System to fit its smaller screen, and the labyrinth level was heavily redesigned for the Game Gear version, but still maintained the same theme. Besides a few sprite differences and a unique intro on the Game Gear version, that's pretty much the only difference between the Master System version and the Game Gear version. Now the last one I'll be talking about today is the Game Boy Advance version of Sonic the Hedgehog. Now for the next game I want to talk about, I thought it would be a good idea to talk about a port of the Genesis version of Sonic the Hedgehog. Seems fair since I already did the Game Gear version of the Master System. The only problem was deciding which one to talk about, since there are many ports of the game. I ended up debating between 2 versions, the GBA version and the iOS/Android version. But I'm going to go with the GBA version just because it's a physical copy. But the reason I was considering the iOS/Android version is because you can play as Knuckles and Tails. The GBA version of Sonic the Hedgehog was released in 2005 for its 15-year anniversary. While the port looks identical, there are a few changes made. The screen ratio has been reduced to fit the GBA screen. This game has 2 unique modes, a classic and a anniversary mode. The only difference is that the anniversary mode gives Sonic a spin dash ability. Again, the spin dash ability wasn't added to Sonic the Hedgehog 2, so it was pretty cool that they added this feature to the anniversary mode. Another nice feature they added is that this version has a save feature. After you beat a level, you can replay them anytime, and if you don't get a game over, you can just quit the game anytime and start off with the level you left off with the same number of Chaos Emeralds collected. Now while this game is a port of the Genesis version, it is a really bad port. The gameplay and the music is constantly out of sync, there is a lot of lag and frame rate issues, and the worst part of it all is that the debug menu was removed. Well, that's the many versions of Sonic the Hedgehog. If I were to rank out which game is the best and the one you should play first, well, it would be a hard tie. I would say either the Genesis version or the Sega Master System version should go first, but it's really hard to say that one is better than the other, because honestly I enjoyed playing both. And second would be the Game Gear version. Although the Game Gear version and the Sega Master System version are very similar, but if you want to experience this version, it should be after the Genesis and Master System games. And at dead last, I would say play the other remakes of Sonic the Hedgehog in the GBA version. It's just a very bad port and I don't recommend it. Well, that's a look at the multiple versions of Sonic the Hedgehog. I really did enjoy making this video for the 25th anniversary of TheBitPlayer. There's more things I want to do, but I just can't do them. Well, that's it for today. Like, sub, share, and all that jazz. Till next time.